It's Red Eye Radio. Garry McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Garry McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Wednesday. Garry, how are you?
Well, I'm looking at the minor league ball team, baseball team.
Yeah.
In Portland, Oregon, the Portland Pickles. Where now officially you will be able to get pickled on edibles. They are the first professional baseball team in America that will be serving edibles. I don't know in which form, or THC products.
Okay, we don't know if it's edibles. We don't know if it's.
We don't know if it's a combination.
Yeah.
I mean, in Portland, for example. Now I got some blowback on this from some people in Portland that I was discussing with this about yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
When I said, well, I mean, we know the only place where Bud Light has to be popular is in Portland. And, you know, you go up and you order a Bud Light. Are you ordering a beer or an edible with less THC content?
I heard they're serving Bud Light instead of milk in schools now in Portland. I could be wrong about that.
Well, I got the elitist shrug of what are you talking about? We are the capital of craft beer. We don't drink Bud Light.
Weed?
Get
your weed?
Don't bring your politics into the discussion of beer if you're discussing Portland.
Weed. Get your weed. Peanuts. Weed. Peanuts. Weed.
For its
hot dogs. Weed.
For its 1 hit, 2 hits, 3 hits, and you're out at the old bong game.
I wonder, can you bring your bong to the game?
Oh, wow.
Hey, don't forget tomorrow night, bring your bong to the game, kids get in half price.
Get your bong bobblehead doll.
Your bobblehead bong.
Your bobblehead bong.
Courtesy of your pickles.
I mean, my God. It's like, well, let me see. Do we want to? We're the cops. Where can we get people for driving while intoxicated?
Yeah.
Well, they come out pretty pickled after a pickles game.
Yeah. Ball 3, high and outside. Speaking of high and outside, let's go out to the parking lot.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Okay, well.
All right, we got a ton of things to talk about, but something that caught my eye, besides, getting pickled at a pickles game.
Uh-huh.
When I couldn't believe it.
Get your weed. Hot dogs, peanuts, weed. Get your weed. Remember, folks, technically everything is edible.
Well, that would totally change Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
What would you like? Remember when Kevin Costner? What would you like? Dog and a beer. It's like dog and a bong.
Weed. Did they build this baseball park in the middle of a weed field? What is that?
Well, it does help with the label of baseball as not a sport but a pastime.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Now, the only thing I was thinking is if you're combining alcohol and pot at a baseball game, do people get bored very quickly?
Probably.
Well, we had to bring in a new pitching clock, and the pitcher has to pitch every second in order to keep the attention of the people in the crowd.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Now, besides that story,
Uh-huh.
And I saw these two stories back to back within 10 minutes yesterday.
All right.
the one story that shows there's a new study out there. The worst run city in the country, San Francisco. Now, you may ask why. Are there any indicators? Are there any clues? Well, besides the old pot thing.
Yeah.
Are there any clues as to why they may be the worst run city? Well, this was during the San Francisco mayoral debate. London Breed, the mayor, went after one of the candidates challenging her. Are you ready?
All right.
Are you ready for this?
Okay.
What question could she possibly ask that would be unique to San Francisco? And let's throw Portland in there, too, since we're talking about Portland. Right?
All right.
Here we go.
I'd like to ask Mark a question. You were at the Harvey Milk LGBT Democratic Club and couldn't name any LGBT advisors to your campaign. You were at the debate last week and couldn't name any drag queens on your own. I was wondering if you could, this is an opportunity to redeem yourself. And if you could name 3 LGBTQ advisors for your campaign and 3 drag queens in San Francisco.
Is that a requirement to run for mayor that you have to be able to identify 3 drag queens?
Oh, yeah.
It's
It's the law.
Oh,
City ordinance number 1.
hold it. Just calm down. Calm down, Corrine. Calm down, KGP. This is not a cheap fake or a deep fake. That really happened.
Mm-hmm. Was that a bad microphone, or were they on Zoom?
I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
The sound
A
wasn't great.
Zoom debate.
Hey, we're gonna.
How'd Jeffrey Toobin get in?
Hey, we're gonna.
And why is he
Oh,
here?
man, I'm telling you,
Ew.
I was happy. I forgot where I was going through. I was just going through audio. It must have been on YouTube yesterday, or not yesterday, but I mean here in the last couple of weeks. And it was the interview where, he was confronted by the other CNN anchor when he did his mea culpa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was like, so, and during the Zoom call,
And what did he say?
you were masturbating. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, not that I'm going to do that when he did, but if I did, I'm done in the business. I'm not going to try to reclaim my reputation.
Well,
it's
again,
over at that point. We're done.
Number 1, no self-awareness. Ironically, after doing that. Think about that. In probably the most self-aware moment, you ruin your career and still have no self-awareness. There's the irony.
Yeah. That's when it's like, nah, you need to hang it up now.
Yeah.
You just it's time. There are things you.
Yeah. Don't come back. Stop talking.
Oh,
don't leave the house. Wow.
But that's just.
Yeah.
You can't name 3 drag queens. Well, this is San Francisco. If you can't name 3 forget about the situation. Forget about the fact that it's unlivable for anybody in the middle class. Can you name 3 drag queens?
I'm just going to give it a shot. Cinnamon, Candy, and Honey Boo Boo.
No. I've got one.
Just in the dark, huh?
From last week.
Yeah.
Remember, was it Miss Maga?
Yeah. Was that the name of the person?
Something like that. Miss Maga.
Yeah.
She was out.
Yeah. The pro-Trump drag queen.
The pro-Trump drag queen. Right.
The one pro-Trump drag queen.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that would have been beautiful.
Yeah.
Certainly, I can name 3 drag queens. They're all Trump supporters. That's how I know.
Exactly.
You do that.
Miss MAGA.
Miss MAGA.
It's a different planet. Honestly, if aliens are here, let's kind of hope that they crash in Las Vegas. Let's kind of hope they don't crash in San Francisco during a debate. Like, Oh man, we got to get out of here now. Yeah, it's so weird. It's just so bizarre to me. But that's the priorities.
I know.
You know, those are the priorities. And it's also why Gavin Newsom is polling so much lower than Kamala Harris. I mean, think about that.
You know, that has to be because a lot of these people are narcissists. That's got to be a blow to your ego.
Oh, man. Well, but we said it. We said, look, if Newsom steps outside of his blue bubble, it's a different world. You get onto the main stage. And we said this before the debate with DeSantis. And it was, you know, you're going to be judged by people that didn't vote for you and in states that don't care about you, you know, that live in states that don't care about you. And it's just, again, no self-awareness whatsoever. They're so caught up and focused, super focused on identity politics, they just can't break it.
No, I don't know if they ever can, because if it's going to be interesting if, you know, we'll see what happens in November. But hypothetically, if they lose and lose big, does that make them change? I would have thought, you remember 2018, where I said the Democrats have to change. They can't, and think about that.
I wondered about that the other day.
6 years ago, well, 6 years ago this November, I said that. 6 years ago, it's like they can't get, and they have, I mean, they were, back then, they were mild compared to where they are now.
Yeah. I was watching an old clip of something just a couple of days ago and just thinking, my gosh, we're light years from those conversations. And now I wondered the same thing the other day. I was wondering what happens if they do get it handed to them, the Democrats, and they don't know where to go. Do they just change tactics and keep doing the same game and change, you know, strategy and not change the basis of what they're doing? I don't know how you undo that kind of indoctrination.
Well, you saw it the last couple of days, and you know the media now getting full behind the fact that don't believe your eyes. What your eyes are seeing are actually a cheap fake or a deep fake. And I saw, what's his name, from Fox Business on with Brett Baer. And they're like, we just played the video. There was no cheap,
right?
Cheap fake, deep fake. We just played the video, and the video has not been edited. And you see just all the media. I mean, the major networks, everything. A cheap fake. This is a cheap fake, a cheap fake, a cheap fake. But they don't get into the specifics about what part of it you're actually looking at. Is that a cheap fake? Because what they said is, well, either you zoom in close, which I didn't see in any of those, but a zoom in isn't necessarily a fake. No. A zoom in gives you a clear understanding of what might be going on because you can get closer, to that person to see what is happening at that particular moment. But it was just, I was laughing yesterday because they're not going to win it. Brett Baer was saying the same thing. He goes, we just played the video of Obama taking him off stage. There was no altering of that whatsoever. But that's what they're attempting to do. Because I think that I'm trying to answer your question in a current event way, which is, what will they do? Will we have an indication of what they will do? They are now to the point of telling you what you see with your own eyes isn't real. Again, upping the whole gaslighting.
Well, that's where I could come up with you just use a different tactic, a different approach on it. You don't change who you are fundamentally. I don't think they will. You can't back out of that kind of indoctrination. There is no backing out. It's part of who you are. You know, they say that, if you're white, then racism is in your DNA. Well, liberalism is in their DNA. There is no way to change that, I'm convinced. There are very few of them that are waking up. Barry Weiss, Matt Taibbi, we're seeing these individuals, and you see the people who, still say they're liberal and they can still be critical thinkers.
I saw Turley the other day saying, I supported Merrick Garland.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, and, Barry Weiss has done that with Trump. She's been very clear and unafraid. And liberals can't do it because too many liberals can't do it because it's all they have. Barry Weiss can look at something, assess it, and go, okay, this is what this really was. I was wrong. And there's zero wrong with what she's done and how she's done that. Being a part of the Twitter files, or as we call them now, the X files, and going through that information, seeing things, seeing facts, that's real journalism. That's what we count on journalists to do.
Well, you have Bill Ackman, that billionaire that went after the Ivy League schools, and also Michael Rappaport.
Yeah.
Both have said,
Exactly.
and Ackman saying the last couple of days, he said, I went back and I watched the Charlottesville tape. He said, I believe, just like Michael Rappaport said, I believe the stories that Trump said something, and then I went back and did my own fact-checking, and they've been promoting the same lie for years now.
Yep.
And Trump specifically said that he was not talking about, the Nazis or whoever else was out there, that he was talking about the people that believe that, no, the statue should stay because of history.
Right.
And he goes, but I believe, and I was shocked. He goes, I fell for the propaganda of the left, which they now understand. And this is the thing. All these liberals that are now questioning now understand that the party that they have been supporting is against basic constitutional rights that exist out there. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Every driver knows the cost of replacing tires is a major expense. What if you could save on tire costs without sacrificing performance or safety? Consider retreads, a sustainable, cost-effective way to rack up your miles. The lower price tag of retreads might make it feel like you're sacrificing performance, but many of the quality retreads available today have proven to perform comparable to new tires. Plus, dependable tire performance also has to do with choosing the right retreads for your application and adopting a tire maintenance routine. Determining the position in which your retreads will be placed and what application they'll be used in should be the first steps you take when purchasing tires, whether new or retreads.
Coming up, more with Garry McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. There was a COVID hearing today. We will get to that. And plus, a couple of premier scientists said zero evidence that it was natural origin COVID.
Yeah, right.
Zero.
Yeah.
So we will get to that coming up. AOC, very blunt that she is pro-terrorist today.
Yeah.
Extremely blunt.
Right. Yep.
That she is pro-terrorist.
Right.
Just amazing.
And keep in mind where her district is. I mean, think about this. That's why I said if there's another terrorist attack on American soil, I can't tell you what the sentiment is going to be from the far left. These radicals are absolutely clear about how they feel. They are pro-Hamas, pro-terrorists, anti-Jew.
Yeah.
This is who they are.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. I'm glad the Republicans aren't forgetting about it. The public may have moved on from COVID, but I'm sure they would like answers. It's not top of mind anymore, but the fact is people understand how our lives were turned upside down and how we were lied to, how the government worked with social media to shut down any legitimate debate, and how if you even brought up the fact, if you were a reputable scientist and brought up and said, well, wait a minute, because there's a very important question here, which the answer is yes, we know now. Did U.S. taxpayer dollars fund the research in Wuhan that helped release a virus? Mm-hmm. Did we fund gain-of-function research? Did we juice up viruses to make them more contagious? And the answer is yes, we funded that research. Now, yesterday, you had Congress talk to the Senate Homeland Security Committee, and Rutgers University molecular biologist Dr. Richard Ebright was there. I'm going to let Rand Paul do his introduction here because it's important that just people know what his background is. Mm-hmm. But we know with any doctor, we know from the emails that exist already that they already had figured out there was an assumption that this thing came, as we know from the emails, was in February 2020. They knew that there was a possibility that this thing was a lab leak. Yeah. And Fauci and others tried to stop it. Yeah. They tried to stop that from coming. They tried to stop that from coming out. We know that. And Fauci's excuse was, well, it wasn't gain of research. We changed the definition. And you and I said, well, they need to stop. Republicans need to stop asking the question of gain of function and just ask the question, did the taxpayer dollars go for research that juiced up a virus and made it more contagious to human beings? Was that the effort to do that? Call it whatever the hell you want. We don't care about the label. Is that what you did? And you and I were screaming the one time to Rand Paul going, ask that question.
Break
the
essence of what you're trying to find out down in simple terms and make him answer that question.
Just, that goes back 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
This isn't today, but here's Rand Paul introducing Dr. to Ebright here, and then you'll hear his statement.
Professor of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Rutgers University. He also serves as the laboratory director for the Waxman Institute of Microbiology, a position he has held for 37 years. Dr. Ebright has authored over 185 peer-reviewed publications and holds more than 45 issued and pending U.S. patents. He's the co-founder of Biosafety Now and a member of the advisory board of the Global Biolabs Project and the Institutional Biosafety Committee at Rutgers University. Previously, he served on the Antimicrobial Resistance Committee for Infectious Disease Society of America, the Controlling Dangerous Pathogens Project, and the Pathogen Security Working Group for the state of New Jersey. Dr. Ebright, welcome to the committee. You are now recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to discuss the origins of COVID-19. I'm Board of Governors Professor of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Rutgers University and Laboratory Director at the Waxman Institute of Microbiology. In my statement, I will present my assessment of the origin of COVID and will summarize key lines of evidence that support my assessment. I assess that a large preponderance of evidence indicates SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID, entered humans through a research incident. I base this assessment on information in publicly available documents, press reports, and scientific papers, on my research experience in microbial genomics, microbial genetics, DNA synthesis technology, and recombinant DNA technology, and on my knowledge of and experience with biosafety, biosecurity, and biorisk management for work with pathogens. 4 key facts support my assessment. First, COVID emerged in Wuhan, a city that is 800 miles from the closest bats harboring SARS-CoV-2-like viruses that could have served as progenitors of SARS-CoV-2, but that contains labs that prior to the outbreak were conducting the world's largest research program on bat SARS viruses possessed the world's largest collection of bat SARS viruses and possessed the virus most closely similar to SARS-CoV-2. The large distance between Wuhan and bats harboring SARS-CoV-2-like viruses points away from a natural origin of COVID, and Wuhan's status as the global epicenter of research on bat SARS viruses points toward a research origin of COVID. Second, in the 4 years preceding the outbreak, Wuhan labs performed research that placed them on a trajectory to obtain SARS viruses having high pandemic potential. And in 2018, 1 year before the outbreak, Wuhan labs proposed research to obtain SARS viruses having even higher pandemic potential and features that match in detail the features of SARS-CoV-2. Wuhan labs performed high-risk virus discovery and gain-of-function research on bat SARS viruses. In their virus discovery research, Wuhan researchers searched for new bat viruses in caves in southern China, brought samples to Wuhan, and sequenced, cultured, and characterized new viruses in Wuhan. In their gain-of-function research, Wuhan researchers genetically modified bat SARS viruses, constructing viruses having enhanced ability to infect human cells and having enhanced viral growth and enhanced lethality in mice engineered to possess human receptors for SARS viruses, so-called humanized mice. Already in 2015, scientists expressed concern that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was conducting research that posed unacceptably high risk. At a 2015 Royal Society and National Academies meeting on gain-of-function research and its oversight, the research on bat SARS viruses by the Wuhan Institute of Virology and its collaborators was singled out as the research most likely of all research in the world to trigger a pandemic. In 2017 to 2018, with NIH funding, the Wuhan Institute of Virology constructed genetically modified SARS viruses that combined the spike gene from one bat SARS virus with the rest of the genetic information from another bat SARS virus, obtaining new viruses that efficiently infected human cells and obtaining at least one new virus that exhibited 10,000 times enhanced viral growth in lungs and 1 million times enhanced viral growth in brains and 3 times enhanced lethality in humanized mice. In 2018, just 1 year before the outbreak, in an NIH grant proposal, the Wuhan Institute of Virology and collaborators proposed to construct additional genetically modified SARS viruses, proposing to construct viruses having spikes with even higher binding affinities for human SARS receptors, seeking viruses having even higher pandemic potential. Also in 2018, just 1 year before the outbreak, in a DARPA grant proposal, the Wuhan Institute of Virology and its collaborators proposed to construct genetically modified SARS viruses having a furin cleavage site, a feature associated with increased viral growth and increased transmissibility. They proposed to insert the furin cleavage site at the spike gene S1, S2 border and to construct the viruses by synthesizing 6 nucleic acid building blocks and assembling them using the reagent BSM-B1. Third, Wuhan labs performed this research on SARS viruses using an inadequate biosafety standard, just biosafety level 2, and inadequate personal protective equipment, just gloves and a lab coat. Lab accidents that result in infection or release are common, even at biosafety levels higher than biosafety level 2. For context, the original SARS virus, SARS-CoV-1, caused lab-acquired infections in Singapore at biosafety level 3, in Beijing twice at biosafety level 3, and in Taipei at biosafety level 4. For further context, SARS-CoV-2 itself caused lab-acquired infections in Beijing in 2020 at biosafety level 3, and in Taipei in 2021 at biosafety level 3. The Wuhan lab's use of biosafety level 2 for research on bat SARS viruses would have posed a high risk, a very high risk, of infection of lab staff upon encountering a virus having the aerosol transmission properties of SARS-CoV-2. Fourth, in 2019, a novel SARS virus having a spike with extremely high binding affinity for human SARS receptors, a furin cleavage site inserted at the spike S1, S2 border, and a genome sequence with features enabling assembly from 6 synthetic nucleic acid building blocks using the reagent BSM-B1, a virus having the exact features proposed in the 2018 NIH and DARPA proposals, emerged on the doorstep of Wuhan Institute of Virology. SARS-CoV-2 is the only one of more than 800 known SARS viruses that possesses a furin cleavage site. Mathematically, this observation alone implies that the probability of finding a natural SARS virus possessing a furin cleavage site is less than 1 in 800. Taken together, the presence of a spike having an extremely high affinity for human SARS receptors, the presence of a furin cleavage site inserted at the spike S1, S2 border, the genome sequence enabling assembly from 6 synthetic nucleic acid building blocks using the reagent BSMB1, and the 1-4-1 match between these features and the features proposed in the 2018 NIH and DARPA proposals make an extremely strong case, a smoking gun, for a research origin. In summary, multiple lines of secure evidence point to a research origin. By contrast, as I hope I will have the opportunity to review in response to questions, no, zero secure evidence points toward a natural origin.
There you go. Now, I know the stuff probably went over my head. Probably everybody else understood it, but it was necessary for him to say all those things because that's the science behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's something that you couldn't even have a discussion on until recently.
No.
And you have to ask why. Why couldn't you talk about the origins of a global pandemic? Why is it that they were so hell-bent on shutting down one side of the conversation?
Why did Democrats have zero curiosity as to where a virus that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, why did they have no curiosity as to where it came from?
I can't remember.
Or investigating where it came from.
I can't remember which media it was, if it was New York Times, Washington Post, or another. I'll have to go back and find it and it's over a year ago. But they were saying that the article basically was, well, the consensus, there's really no debate anymore. This is what they try and do. There's really no debate anymore. This was from Nature. The media doing things like that. You know, if there's going to be an opinion piece where you have a doctor that's at least a doctor and is going to give their opinion on it, that has some involvement in it, then you've got credibility. But that's not what was happening with the media. The media was helping the left shut down anything involving a lab leak theory. Social media will shut you. You won't have an existence on social media if we have our say, if you even entertain the idea of a lab leak theory. Why would they do that? Why would they be so hell-bent on doing that?
Well, because they got caught funding the Wuhan lab with taxpayer dollars.
Exactly. There had to be something else going on.
With not the proper oversight
and we knew
to ensure that it didn't escape.
And we knew that from the beginning. Otherwise, you have absolutely no fear in going after the truth.
Right.
Unless the truth involves something more nefarious.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. You know, one of the things that we ask is, number one, why did the left and the Democrats have no curiosity about where this lab leak came from? That they just said, well, no, we're not lab leak. You know, where COVID came from. How come they discounted the lab leak when the evidence wasn't in? And we said, well, look, you look at it, there is no. Early on, we said there is no evidence that points to one, so both were theories. Mm-hmm. And as we've gone down the line now, we see now that much more of the consensus is that it was a lab leak, and this was something that was manipulated by man.
Yeah.
Man created this.
Yeah.
Dr. Stephen Quay also, believes that it was a, lab leak and came from the lab and was engineered. And he said the problem is that the reason this is so important is right now in those labs, they're working with viruses that are much more lethal and contagious that could create a pandemic way worse than we saw with COVID.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be, if you don't look and say, wait a minute, here is what we did wrong, and we need to stop this, or we need to have much, higher security, it's going to happen again.
Yep.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Garry McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Good morning. Sorry, I got the hiccups.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. Not exactly what you want when you're doing a radio show. All right, I seem to be okay. We were talking about the origins of COVID hearing yesterday in the Senate, and it was actually fascinating to watch. I want to play just a shorter audio cut. This is of Dr. Stephen Quay, who also agreed with Dr. Ebright that that COVID came from a lab leak and was not of natural origin.
Mm-hmm.
That man created, or juiced up other viruses in order to make the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Mm. And here's where he talks about the fact that, as we said before, why it's important, because they're still doing research on dangerous viruses. Here's a point that he brings up here.
I have a number of specific reforms I believe should be implemented, and I would be happy to discuss them during the questioning. What happens if we have these hearings and nothing happens? The Wuhan Institute of Virology right now is testing a Nipah virus in a synthetic clone. This is a U.S. CDC bioterrorism agent. It kills 3 out of 4 people. A lab leak with an airborne Nipah virus would quickly, within weeks, disrupt food and energy distribution, fire and police services, medical care. My analysis of this tipping point event is that it would set back civilization about 250 years. The work of this committee is critical. If we now fail to act with the knowledge we have, history, if it can still be recorded, will judge us poorly.
And again, the Democratic Party, no interest, no curiosity in finding out precisely where it came from, and we've been talking about this for years now, and never have had any curiosity. And you have to ask the question, why? Why on a virus which now the preponderance of evidence shows it came from a lab leak and was not of natural origin, which means American taxpayer dollars went in to a facility where, number one, should we be doing that? And number two, if we're doing it, should we actually have the preparation and the security to ensure that the virus can't get out? One or the other, or both.
Well, and why that lab? Who else is in on that entire situation? Who has control over that situation? Why would taxpayer dollars be needed? There's a million questions, because when you answer honestly and say yes, it came from the Wuhan lab, now you've opened the door, and it's never ending. My first question actually is it still going on? Are we funding other types of experiments with other viruses?
Oh, yeah, that's what he just said.
This is the question. Yeah. To what extent is that happening? We had this question from the beginning. Because when you hide something, it tells me you're still engaged in it or you were responsible for it in the first place. So we got our answer. What most of us suspected. Because we know what lying looks like. We know what trying to hide the truth looks like. Why would you run in circles the way that Fauci did from Rand Paul over and over again? Because the media had made him into a hero, especially after Trump was gone. Fauci became the media hero. He was the media darling. And he could do no wrong. Well, a real hero would be getting to the bottom of it. A real hero would be doing everything, in fact, including sacrificing his own career to make sure that the truth was known, to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
You had Josh Hawley go after Dr. Robert Garry, who co-authored the controversial paper published by Nature at the beginning of the pandemic that discredited the lab leak theory. And then we saw what happened, prompted social media platforms to censor discussions on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, is the relationship. That was all part two of the Twitter files, as we all know. It just wasn't the laptop. It was how the government worked with social media to shut down discussions on COVID, the origins of COVID, and whether the government was being honest with the American public as to what to do. And we know the Great Barrington Declaration that came out in October of 2020 basically said, look, the things you're doing is what we should not be locking down the schools. I guess Fauci, I got to find the New York Post article where Fauci admitted we shouldn't have shut down the schools. He actually admitted that one. Mm-hmm. And like I said, slowly but surely, the truth is going to come out. But here's part of Josh Hawley going off on Dr. Robert Garry.
Dr. Garry, you were part of this propaganda effort. I mean, you were right at the center of it. It's astounding. You wrote this piece, this Nature magazine piece or whatever it was that we've heard testimony here today, Nature Medicine, March 17th, 2020. We've heard testimony here today from other scientists on the panel that it's basically an opinion piece. You said at the time that definitively SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory construct, is not a laboratory construct. Of course, our own government, key agencies have concluded otherwise. And on the basis of this, Dr. Fauci and others cited this piece and went out to use it to mobilize our own government to censor people who ask questions about it. People lost their jobs because of this. They lost their jobs. They lost their standing. They were kicked off Facebook. They were kicked off Twitter. Do you regret being part of this effort, this propaganda effort?
Sir, I was simply just writing a paper about our scientific opinions about where this virus came from.
Oh, no, you weren't. You said in an email that we now have that you tried to withhold, but that we have, February 2nd, 2020, you wrote, I really can't think of a plausible natural scenario where you can get from the bat virus or one very similar to it to this. I'm quoting you. I just can't figure out how this gets accomplished in nature. It's stunning. Of course, in the lab, it would be easy.
Well, of course. And I actually figured it out. That's the whole point of
You figured it out? You wrote this while you were writing your propaganda piece, while you were writing your paper.
I wrote that somewhere around February 2nd.
It was exactly February 2nd. And you've testified that you were writing your proximal origin paper in early February. So you're saying that, what did it come to you overnight?
There was new data that
like
came in.
A revelation from God.
No.
Overnight you concluded, method. I got it. I figured it out. And now I can definitively rule out. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's where he got burned big time. That's where the doctor got burned big time, because at the same time that he was writing the Nature thing, that he said, discredited the lab leak theory, behind the scenes, he was saying, I can't think of anything that shows that this is natural origin.
Right.
In personal emails.
Right.
And he's trying to say, well, I learned new things. No, because then then as being someone who worked with Dr. Fauci, there would have been a change in the narrative, and there was no change in the narrative. The narrative remained the same, and he's getting burned big time by saying, well, you learn these things in science. That's a lie.
It's, there, again, has to be a network of people involved in a cover-up like this. An entire network of people. We talk about the difference politically in the similar mindset and conspiracies where people have to work together. On something like this, it's a concerted effort. It's a large number of people that are sending the talking points down the line. Man, I want to see that chain of emails. I want to see those communications. I want to see who all was involved in shutting it down, because it's clear. It's very clear. I mean, what you just heard right there is similar to the whole Elizabeth Holmes thing where, in her lab, they were like, we can't do what you're claiming we can do. And then on the surface and with investors telling a very different story.
That's amazing how far that actually went, though, isn't it? That
boggles my
that story
mind.
Still years later.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah,
I don't know how you get things started. Imagine being in a place like that. Just imagine the simplest of ideas. Hey, I want to start a business doing something like this. It's like, yeah, people look at you. Yeah, well, good luck with that. She was able to get investors.
I know.
Now look at something like this, where there is a narrative where we just heard evidence of the thought in private versus the thought in public. And it is, I don't know, again, how many people it would take for this is a global narrative. I mean, I know we're talking about the U.S. here, but this became a global narrative, which means you had countless people involved in that narrative and relaying those talking points, and it was a very clear set of standards on those talking points. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. Otherwise, one person says, well, I'm not going to say that.
I know. Yeah.
They've been told or sold something likely to the effect of, if you tell the truth about it, people will riot. The whole world will go crazy. We can't do this. This is for the safety of people, because what we do know is that Fauci has admitted to saying things that would manipulate people's behavior. And it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do, but it was about manipulating behavior.
And we remember how the left was just pounding on Rand Paul.
Oh,
he's not a doctor. He's not a doctor.
Blah,
he's
blah,
not.
blah.
And guess what? Rand Paul was right.
Rand Paul could be single-handedly, certainly one of very few people that bulldogged this thing right into a corner where they had no choice, where it was inevitable the truth was going to come out. And he's to be commended for that. And it started exactly as you said, the media. Oh, Rand Paul and his conspiracy theory. And I think it was well after the exchange, one of the exchanges with Fauci, that media story I was talking about earlier came out. Oh, well, look, it's 98% sure. That was the spirit of that article. 98% sure that it came from nature. And that was never the case. It was never the case. And here's the thing, too. It's not that someone came in and said it's absolutely the case that it was a lab leak theory. It was, or lab leak. It was that it was a theory. People just wanted to have the conversation.
Right. Because they were both theories, as we've said at the very beginning. So we said, well, we didn't know. They're both theories. How can you say one theory is the official position of the government when you don't have the evidence to prove it? Yet the other, and this is early on when we said this, and the other theory, it just doesn't exist and must be censored. Understand, though, remember, these are the people, we saw it. We saw, I love, some of the stories that we go back and remember the guy that was surfing in California, where basically the Coast Guard picked him up because of COVID. You're not supposed to be out there surfing. Or the people that were like at a, Lover's Lane cliff, in there, looking at the sunset in California, and they were busted for sitting in their cars. Or remember the churches that wanted to have, people come up, and the pastor would be, at a podium outside, and the people would be sitting in their cars.
Yeah.
Remember how they were busted?
Yeah.
Understand. I guess I can use the word now. Understand the Nazi-like rules and regulations that went into effect, that none of it was based on science at all. None of that was based on science. None of it.
Nope. And look at how determined they were. Now, on all of that, it's very clear. The left wanted they've always wanted complete control of people's behavior. If we can fearmonger them into staying inside and not going anywhere, we're halfway there. If we can keep them, and with the fear of a SWAT team coming after you in church, keep them from practicing their religion, keep them from enjoying any liberty whatsoever. Tom Brady's on a trail outside in a park taking a jog in Florida. We'll have none of that.
And now Governor Hochul wants to ban masks.
Yeah.
To get to that story in New York.
Yeah. Right. Because they're using, now the bad guys are using masks, as masks to cover their face.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
It's a common road rumor that it's impossible for one-truck owner-operators and even carriers with just 2 or 3 trucks to get freight direct from the source, the shipper. Yet, hard-won experience from untold numbers of owner-operators with authority disproves the notion. Search your home base area and, later, frequent freight destinations to find all the manufacturers, distributors, and other shippers in the area. Once you get that list, ask yourself if those companies know who you are and what you do. If not, you're leaving opportunities on the table. Strive to own your backyard, to build a solid foundation for the business. For many a small fleet, it's the loads outbound from home that are the bread and butter. But you can take that same approach to the destination area, identifying shippers there and getting on the phone to make sure they know who you are and what you do. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Good morning. Coming up, the CBO now raises the 2024 deficit forecast by $400 billion. It's now going to be $1.9 to $2 trillion. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did they say the national debt was going to be by? It was something like by the year 20. 2050 or 2040, it was going to reach.
But from 2025 to 2034, they now project the deficits for just that 9 or 10 year period of 22.1 trillion on top of the 33 we have now. Is it 33 trillion? I forget. We're going up so quickly, who knows? So we're talking about 2035, roughly you would have at least 55 to 60 trillion dollars in debt, because none of those deficits are going to be paid off.
Yeah. National debt will exceed 50 trillion by 2034. Yep. Wow.
Bringing on the chaos, Garry McNamara and Eric Harley. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Yeah, thanks. You found the article for me that I saw yesterday from the New York Post. Actor Anthony Fauci finally reverses course, agrees keeping school closed during COVID was a mistake. I mean, they're eventually all going to have to back off on everything.
Yep. Yeah.
He had said so. He had said the social distancing already. He backed off on that one.
Yep.
He said there was, nothing there, and now he told CBS keeping it for a year was not a good idea. That shutting down schools for more than a year due to the virus was a mistake, while also arguing that the initial decision to close classrooms was correct. Did he explain that? Because there's still no evidence that shows that we should have shut down schools for any length of time.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about for a couple of weeks,
if you're talking
in March of 2020.
When it first happened for a couple of weeks, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Because when you did know.
You had no clue at that point, and I think parents were probably pretty nervous at that point. I think schools may have been shut down, whether they officially shut down or not.
The reporter from CBS asked a question, so it was a mistake in retrospect. We will not repeat it. Absolutely, yeah, Fauci responded. Mm-hmm. He's going to slowly back off on everything that he did, but he's going to do it slowly so people won't notice.
I signed it, but I wish I hadn't.
Because he still has hero worship, hero worship status on the left.
Right.
For what reason, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
They can't explain why. It's just, okay, all right, you first supported Trump and then you were against Trump, so we support you irrespective of what you were promoting.
Right.
I mean, am I wrong to say that, or is that what it comes down to?
No, but as he backs out of all these things and basically undoes all of this, you see that the media is probably just going to naturally fade away from him. Well, we have no use for you anymore. So, see ya. And the problem with the media is that they were fully invested.
Well, remember who really led? Who really led the charge for keeping schools closed as long as they did? The teachers union.
Yeah.
Randy Weingarten.
Mm-hmm.
Was constantly promoting. A couple of years later, well, we are having negotiations to open up schools.
Right.
There were some closed for like 2 years.
Right. Then it felt like, by the end of it, they were going to march to reopen the schools. Like they never even supported closing the schools.
Right. Yeah. And Fauci got caught in that lie.
Right.
Well, you said close the schools. I didn't close the schools. I had no authority to close the schools.
Right.
No, but that's the advice that you gave. Yeah, but I didn't close it.
You waved your wand.
Right. Nobody said you could close the schools. They followed the advice that you gave where you told them to close the schools. And then they had the tape of him there. Mm-hmm. So he was answering a question that he wasn't asked.
Right.
And it's just, and so, I mean, that's actually a big one for him to back off on. Then again, the Fauci apparently is one of those people that still doesn't understand that the internet exists.
You know, open the schools, close the liquor stores because everybody seems to be drunk. Wow. Remember that?
Yeah, the liquor stores had to remain open.
Oh, yeah.
They were necessary businesses.
Well, they were necessary to keep the people nice and calm.
Sedate the masses.
Exactly. Eric's drinking tequila. He's not going to be sedated. It's going to be the opposite. And over and over, what did they find at one point? Half of the people working from home were drinking on a regular basis while working from home during the 8 hours that you're supposed to be working for your company. They were drinking.
Yeah. And the other half was lying.
The other half was too drunk to respond to the pollster. I don't need this in my life. It's where we were. Think about that. Okay. We'll leave the liquor stores open. What about weed?
Oh. You have to go to a Portland Pickles game for that.
Exactly.
So the Portland Pickles minor league continues because you can get your weed there.
Man, what did the dispensaries look like during COVID? People walking around triple masked, wanting to know, should they inhale?
Now, do I take the vape? Do I put it under the mask or do I breathe it through the mask?
Right. And how long can I lower the mask in order just to vape? You can't do it for drinking, but you can do it for vaping.
Oh, I remember.
Remember that?
I remember when I was flying and you had to wear the mask.
Unless you were drinking or eating.
Drinking or eating.
Yeah.
And it's like there, as I think it was Holman Jenkins in the Wall Street Journal. Let me just find it here. That was talking about that, and that after, what they knew was that this thing was so incredibly contagious.
Yeah.
That the rules were just stupid, that everybody got it. Everybody, you couldn't stop this thing.
Well, you're flying in a metal tube with hundreds of other people and shared air. The mask will do two things: diddly and squat. Seriously. I mean, remember Ted Cruz drinking coffee on a plane and the media went after him? He kept his mask off the whole time.
You're right.
I was drinking coffee.
I forget about those things.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I'm telling you, if they do the COVID thing, just do it as a documentary series. And you got to just tell the story as it happened. And then let people look back on it and go, whoa. Now, here's the difference. People were so drunk, they probably won't remember anything that happened during COVID.
I do.
We weren't drinking. We were sober and going to work in the office.
Yes. Every day. Insisted
we were one
to
of,
our management that
we were one of very few, if any, others. I don't know of any others. The show was always based here in the office.
And I think the policy of the company was everybody work at home.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? And we said no.
Right. We don't care. Number one, we don't care about the safety of our staff. Number two,
we didn't care about our own safety.
We don't care about our own safety. We're rebels.
Yeah.
Number three,
money is more important than death.
Yeah.
That's what we told them.
And then we ended with badges. We don't need no stinking badges for no reason at all.
No, we just, because, the thing is, I was thinking about that just when I was walking the halls during one of the breaks.
Right.
After playing some of the doctors. And I was thinking the day one when I woke up and I think it was that March?
Yeah.
10th or 11th.
Yeah.
Of 2020.
Why was I thinking the 7th? It may have been the 10th. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was after I had gone to Buffalo, because it was the last time I saw my mom.
Yeah.
And so I remember when there's an email and you're texting me going, we're not supposed to go to work. Well, we have no choice. We're not set up to do the show.
We don't have anything to do the show with.
From home, and they're like, well, you have to do it. We go, well, then there's no show.
Right.
And it's like, no, whatever we need to do, we're keeping the show. We just knew that when it got to that point, we just said this is going to be the biggest story, one of the biggest stories in our lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not going to do, even if we can set it up in a week, we're not going to do shows from home where we were afraid we could lose the chemistry between us. We couldn't react the same way. And we just said, no, if this is the biggest story, we go into work. We need to shine. Don't need technical problems. We don't need, remember the radio shows that did it from home?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the same audio quality.
Well, it wasn't the same audio quality. You also don't have the same resources. I mean, it's
right.
And business overall found this out, whether it's broadcasting or any other business. You just don't have that same. You don't have that same synergy that you would have inside the workplace. That's what corporate America essentially found out.
Yeah, and that's why
too late, I believe.
Yeah, that's why more people are back at work. Even though if you go to LinkedIn, there's always the people. Every single day on LinkedIn, there's the people that are still working at home saying, "Here are the benefits to working from home," and they didn't get blasted a year ago. Now they're getting blasted.
So I have a couple of members of my family. My son, my nephew, both have jobs where they have always worked from home, and in both cases, and I would hate it actually. Not just for this job, but for the situation that they have. They get a break just like people get a break. Okay, whatever time it is, 10:30 a.m., 15 minutes. But you've got to be there at your workstation. The nature of both of those jobs, you've got to be there because you're taking calls from other people in the company. You're fielding calls. My son's an advisor. My nephew is an underwriter for a major company, and your phone's going to ring, and you got to be right there.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just walk down. You can't even walk down the hall. You've got to, if you've got business to take care of, got to do it during your break time. And there are plenty of jobs that are like that. Those are few and far between. And now I saw something at, I think it was CNBC a few weeks ago. A guy that had since the beginning of COVID was secretly working two full-time jobs from home simultaneously.
Wow.
And I don't know how you balance that. I mean, there's got to be, I guess it depends on the nature of the job, and he said he would never go back to, number one, working just one job because he's making so much money, and number two, he would never go back to working in any office. Again, there may be some of those jobs out there, but that's not what corporate America found overall. That synergy in the workplace is important because that's how things get done. The productivity was measured. If people were more productive overall working from home, people would still be working from home, and they would have kept that in play and probably would never change it. But that's not the case. That's not what they found. Otherwise, again, they'd still be doing it.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Garry McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. All right, CBO increases what the deficit will be this year to almost $2 trillion coming up. And by the way, none of the presidential candidates are talking about the debt. Doesn't matter whether you're a Republican,
you're right.
the Republican
No, you're
Party or
right.
the Democratic Party. Nobody is talking about the debt that we have.
Well, the one headline that hit me today, national debt will exceed $50 trillion by 2034. I tend to believe we're going to get there faster, according to the CBO. And that's the headline from the Washington Post. And I thought, well, since when did they care the Washington Post about the national debt? Because you could, it is a story because the CBO report that came out. Mm-hmm. But is that the headline? I mean, is who cares about where the national debt is now, much less in 2034? And you're not going to, it's not a point of contention. And until we get to the point of not being able to service the interest on our debt, then nothing will change. Because at that point, when we can no longer do that, programs will just disappear. They'll go away. There won't be a choice.
Well, what's happening now is they just keep borrowing more money to pay the interest on the debt, and no programs are getting cut.
No.
That's why the deficit keeps going up and up and up and up, and the debt keeps skyrocketing. What were they? It was was it for a while there was every 100 days it was going up $1 trillion.
Yeah. And we said that right. That's why I said, earlier, 2034, better get to 50 trillion even faster.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. It is a sad day. I saw the Dallas Morning News has reported it. I did see it on social media, but no official notice on it. But people that I do trust in the media earlier. But then I just saw that the Dallas Morning News reported it. Great friend of the show, Dr. Alan Sachs, political science professor, longtime political science professor at University of Texas at Arlington, died. Don't know what date precisely he did, but it was reported he died at age 85. A great friend of Red Eye.
He really was.
Great
and
friend.
We've had him on multiple times, usually around election time. He also has been a mainstay on our flagship station, WBAP, here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And the one word that comes to my mind, if you're to describe his demeanor, is jovial. He just sounded so enthusiastic, because he was, about talking everything politics and breaking down an election or anything else political was just a real passion of his, which is, if you're doing that for a living as a professor, you would hope that it would be. And he just had a great take on it. He was always pleasant and fun to talk to.
I think probably from 2000 to 2008, a number of his classes.
Yeah.
spoke at a number of his classes, had the greatest time that you can imagine. I think about the things that I've done, the speeches and going to different schools, whatever. Those were some of the best things that I ever did, was speaking before his political science class at UTA. It's University of Texas at Arlington, for people that may not know it, who don't live in the area. And I can still remember, I'd park my car. They tell me where I could park my car, and then I'd go in, and you're in a college campus and kids all over the place, and just standing outside his classroom. And it was anything from a small classroom to big auditoriums that I spoke in, depending on what class it was. And I don't know. I would hope that at UTA, and especially at most Texas colleges, that you could still do that today, that you could bring in a conservative voice to, and that's why he brought me in. He brought me in to discuss the issues of the day and to give my opinion, and he would bring in somebody from the left later on. But we had him, 2000, he was, he was up late, for the election in 2000.
Yeah.
Up very late for that.
Right.
I have to thank him because I've told the story before, and a lot of people, they go, come on. But before I came here to Texas, I was seriously thinking of getting out of talk radio. There's...
Like our production staff right now.
There's a... and because you've been in it long enough, too. I didn't feel that I was able to bring everything that I wanted to the table each and every day and have the freedom and creativity to do it. Not that anybody really ever told me what to say, but the formatics of where it was going. Or they never told you what to say, but it was like, but you need to do this, you need to do this. I think in any profession that you're in, I don't care whether it's professional sports or the media, people will hire you saying, we want you, and 2 weeks later, they don't like you. And I have other things that I've done in my life. And I had some offers when I was in Oregon. And I loved living in Oregon. I loved, not the not the leftists. And who knows whether I'd love living there today after what happened, what's happened in that downtown area over the over the years.
He's spending a lot of time at Pickles games.
Gary's on a talk radio now. What a Pickles game. Go Pickles! Go Pickles! I can't wait till the 7th inning bong. Yeah. By the way, we were talking about it earlier. The minor league team now is going to have THC products there. But you're always, in the first decade that you're in talk radio, you're trying to figure out how to handle all the serious issues that you talk about and the response that you get. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do talk radio. That was the one thing. Never wanted to do it. And I got forced to do it back in 89. The owner of the station said, you have no choice. We can't find who we like to do the talk show. You're going to do it. I said, I can't, and I won't. She goes, you don't have a choice. I got no raise. I got nothing. But God rest her soul, whenever I talked to Sue later on in my life, I had to thank her. Thank you for making me do talk radio for no raise at all, because it became exactly what I love doing the most. And I've always told people this, if you want an example of somebody who hated something and thought they'd never like it, I never wanted to do talk radio. So the first 10 years especially, I was always thinking about it. He was one of the people that helped me just take joy out of it. Because when you talk politics all the time, it's serious stuff. A lot of it can be life and death. How do you bring your own personality into it? How do you get to enjoy it every single day? Because I probably get that question. You probably get that too. How do you handle it? Every day is negative stuff. Every day is negative stuff. Every day is negative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you got to go in. You have to sit there and say, all right, I know it's serious stuff, but how do I communicate it effectively? I communicate it effectively by being one happy person. One happy person. People know that you're basically a happy person. They know that you can be sarcastic. You laugh a lot. I got a lot of that from Dr. Sachs. In the first couple of years here, I realized, no, I have to have, if I can't have joy doing this, I need to get out. And I was thinking about that before I came here. If I can't have the best time of my life doing this, why am I doing it? And then by the time you get on this show, and you and I always had the sort of the same motto: if you can't have fun working overnight at your job, quit.
Yep.
And do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're working overnights and because you enjoy it so much and you get to do what you want, stay with it, appreciate it every single day. And so Dr. Sachs really, he was one of the people that helped me realize you could have total and complete joy while talking politics.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make it interesting, and you can get the attention of young people, because when I would speak before his class, man, they were zeroed in on what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really were. Now, whether I could do that today at college campuses would be another discussion to have. But so I have to thank Dr. Sachs, for that, because he really helped me form sort of the formatics of your personality, which is me. I mean, this is me on the air. It's like, be you on the air. Do you laugh a lot? Laugh all the time. You got to bring that to the show. You got to bring who you are to the show. You got to have fun. We never had this talk, but how he handled his class and the smile that he had and the twinkle in his eye. Because if you knew Dr. Sachs, there was always a twinkle in his eye going.
You could hear the twinkle in his eye and his voice.
Yeah, like
on the radio.
I'm going to get these young people to think this. I'm going to get these young people to consider this possibility here, knowing that they were going to go, and then he just thrived on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and quite unfortunately, we had been, in fact, invited a number of times to speak together to his class. And it just was, the schedule was just impossible to make it happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was always great, not just to have him on, but when I would listen to him on WBAP, when you would hear him talk,
you'd smile.
It was so pleasant. It was so great to have someone who was so passionate, to hear someone who was so passionate about it, and also know that they were helping shape some of those young minds out there in a very honest and, I think, positive approach.
He didn't teach you what to think. He taught you to think.
How to think. And
how to
that's
think. Yeah.
And
right.
in terms of
critical
being able to tear down something, an idea, and then form your opinion.
Yep.
And that is something that's really all you could ask for, because when we break things down, you know how we got there. We pride ourselves on being able to break down arguments and tell you why we believe what we believe. And we only ask that of others, and the left has just abandoned that altogether.
And I will say this, he saw that in what you and I do.
Yeah.
He knew that and told us that.
Yeah.
That he loved the way that we broke down ideas.
Right.
So that was, call it maybe a little bit of a mutual admiration society or whatever. Maybe you want to say it's just a bunch of narcissists complimenting each other, but it wasn't. It was the joy that you saw that person got, and I think he saw the joy that we had. And I never told him that because I never thought about it much.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I only really thought about it earlier today when I saw the reports that he had died. And I said, oh, my gosh, I just realized what he did.
Yeah.
I just never because it was just so natural. But he was one of them that helped me, say, if you're going to do this, you better have fun. And I think everybody knows that listens to us. We talk the serious issues, but we have a blast every day, and it's like going in to do the Super Bowl every day, and it becomes addicting every day. It's become sort of an addiction. I don't need to go to the Portland Pickles game to become addicted to something.
Right. I can smoke weed at home. So
no, it's
well,
true. It's like an enjoyable addiction with no downside.
And I don't feel like it's a job. Technically, It is my job, but I don't want it to ever feel like a job.
Yep.
I don't like watching a clock except for when our producer, Alan, is waving his hands, telling us we're late for a break. Mm-hmm. We're forced to watch the clock. I don't like the clock watching mentality, and we've all been there. It's like, okay, come on, 5 o'clock, and in our case, 5 a.m. I don't like that. We're still talking. We're still carrying on the talk show. Literally, this is not an exaggeration, but literally, as we're walking to our car, we're still talking topics.
I'm shutting my door, and so that as I'm shutting my door and turning the car engine on.
Right.
One of these days, I'm probably going to have to open up the window. We'll open up the windows as we're driving out of the parking lot. We're still talking to each other.
Yeah.
But you're right, though. That was the one thing. We've all had teachers in our lives. We go, okay, that teacher's putting in the time. Mm-hmm. And then there's teachers you go, wow, this person really loves what they're doing. This isn't a job to them.
Well, it's the foundation of who they are.
And he made it where I was like, I don't know what to say to kids, when I first started, doing that, to the point where I couldn't wait to go. I couldn't wait. It was so enjoyable to go speaking to his classes and knowing that and sometimes the kids would be shy. I go, don't be shy. Tell me what you think.
Right.
Tell me what you think. Tell me, not what everybody else what do you think?
Right.
And they would tell you. And then you go back, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? And we had some discussions today or back then that would be considered so tribal today, you could never have the back and forth, yet we had the back and forth.
Mm-hmm. And it's the way it should be.
Yeah, it is. Really is.
The discussions should be had, but you can't have them now because the left insists on shutting everything down. Make everything offensive so you don't have to have the discussion. And that's tragic.
So rest in peace, Dr. Sachs. And thank you.
Thank you.
866-90-RED-I.
Coming up, more with Garry McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. We spent the first part of the show talking about the COVID hearings yesterday. We can't leave that without mentioning this article, Holman Jenkins in the Wall Street Journal. You didn't think any question related to COVID would be settled in the recent congressional grilling of Anthony Fauci, and you were right. That's why the episode came and went from your news feed with barely a ripple. Here's a story that needs to be fleshed out. COVID was a super fast spreader compared with the ordinary flu or even the novel pandemic flu that afflicts mankind once or twice a century. Its super fast spread had a particular outcome in Wuhan, northern Italy, and New York City, where the virus spread unrecognized for weeks, and severe cases, though a very small percentage of the total, reached a critical mass at overwhelmed hospitals, where communities anticipated the virus and people made small adjustments. The catastrophes weren't repeated. A vast fog of recrimination since have obscured that part of the story. Our efforts did nothing to stop COVID, and yet all but extinguished the flu during the first 2 years in question. One variety, called the Yamagata B strain of flu, appears to have been rendered extinct altogether by social distancing efforts that had zero effect on COVID itself. That's how fast-spreading COVID was and how uncontainable it was. Stop here. If COVID's uniquely rapid spread was due to lab modification, as accumulating circumstantial evidence suggests, that's extremely important to know. Back to history, most people's experience of COVID wasn't going to be bad enough to justify lockdowns. They wouldn't voluntarily stop normal living. The spread wasn't going to be curtailed. On the same day, President Trump received a report saying the virus had the potential to be $1 trillion calamity. I wrote that it was already certainly spreading undetected in New York City and was less deadly than reported thanks to unobserved mild or symptomless cases. I was channeling what epidemiologists were thinking at the time. Scientists, it's true, would end up surrendering to the politicians, but the real story is the politicians surrendered to the public, which wanted to be told an unrealistic story about the virus being stamped out. The turning point came when the Trump administration extended its 15-day stay-at-home guidance after polling showed the public didn't want flatten the curve. It wanted to be spared COVID altogether, although all knew that this was impossible. If you wondered why COVID experience is playing no role in the election or slightly favors Mr. Trump, this is why. Americans have now experienced a disease and realized it was far from unendurable. Those lockdowns were needless destruction. Vaccine mandates were not going to stop the spread, although the vaccine itself reduced the risk of severe outcomes in vulnerable patients. Mr. Biden is now more associated with the failed medical establishment and post-COVID inflation than Mr. Trump is. Test, trace, and quarantine was absurd and worthless when 90% of infections went unreported.
Yep. Exactly.
So,
and it was always going to be that way, but we were breaking it down back then.
yeah, we were. Yeah.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. I just want to read a couple more sentences from this Holman Jenkins op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal, or editorial, on the whole COVID thing with the COVID origin hearings yesterday being held in the Senate. Because Mr. Biden is now more associated with the failed medical establishment and post-COVID inflation than Mr. Trump is. Test, trace, and quarantine was absurd and worthless when 90% of infections went unreported. Mask mandates undoubtedly caused some vulnerable people to die because they believed a mask would protect them. These steps were a political show as the virus made its inevitable way through the population while politicians competed to suggest how valiant they were trying to stop it. It was a hand-waving show, unbelievably expensive and wasteful, and lacking was corrective reporting from our press. The essence of our folly was the fetish of the news media of the pathologically stupid confirmed case count. You and I talked about that so many times.
Yeah.
The confirmed case count, which made the virus seem more deadly rare and unstoppable than it was, justifying a tone of media blame against any politician who seemed insufficiently committed to stopping it. As I noted at the time, another large democratic country with an English language press, India, where cognitive realism led reporters to relegate confirmed case reports to the bottom of news accounts. Their reporting focused on antibody studies showing the real spread to be 20 to 30 times greater. And how many times did we talk about that, Eric? That that it doesn't mean anything. And still today, I was looking at the COVID numbers today because we heard a few months ago, get what I think it would be the 5th booster because these new strains are out there, and I'm when you look at COVID right now, it's been the last couple of weeks, one, is it hospitalization? I think it is 1.1 per 100,000. I'm just looking at it very quickly here. Hospitalization rate per 100,000 population, 1.
Yeah.
Per 100,000. Deaths, percentage of all deaths in the U.S. due to COVID-19, 0.6%, which is nothing.
Right.
When you look at those particular numbers.
Right.
And so the question, we asked this the other day, well, are we immune from these new strains? Because why aren't they, if we're not, why aren't a heck of a lot more people getting sick?
Right.
Because really after the first two, and especially after the first three, which was the first 2 COVID shots on the first booster, hardly anybody is getting the vaccine.
Yeah. Maybe I quit looking for it, but I don't see anything in pharmacies. It's probably somewhere posted. Get your booster vaccine somewhere, but I'm seeing more often than not, ask us about, just generically ask us about vaccines for different things.
He goes, I choose the phrase cognitive realism to contrast with the U.S. press, which picks sides among political leaders and filters reality through a need to valorize its favorites and vilify the baddies. I like that, the baddies.
Yeah.
And it led to Joe Biden's absurdly unscientific vaccine mandates designed for a political end to focus blame for COVID on the media stereotype of a GOP loyalist and Trump supporter. In a democracy, voters get the government they ask for. If so, the most important COVID lesson is the one least mentioned. Read between the lines of today's newsroom furors at the Washington Post, New York Times, and other outlets. Their mission of the press seems still dangerously up in the air. The job should be helping the public understand what disciplined factual reasoning can tell us about the world. It's hard to believe our socio-political COVID outcomes wouldn't have been a lot better if the media had done so. You and I talked about this all the time, that by looking at the fatality rate or the number of people who, the fatality rate based on the number of people that had it, which was based on those people that were tested, leaving 90% of the people out, gave a huge skew to that number that made COVID seem way more lethal than it actually was. And they knew it because if we said it way back then, years ago, if the two idiots overnight can figure this out, it's not really complicated science.
Right. Right. And that was my point earlier. We broke it down early on because it isn't. We're, as humans, we know how viruses work. And outside of that first few weeks, we started to learn very quickly where it was going. And why is that? Well, because we can observe it around us. And we have known for a long time that any virus is going to be more dangerous to those who are older and those who have underlying conditions. So from there, we assess our own risk every single day with a number of things in our life, and we're asking the questions, well, wait a minute. How is this behaving differently? And remember when you started talking herd immunity, and that was another conspiracy theory?
Yeah, I know.
How is herd immunity a conspiracy theory? But it was.
Yeah.
If you talked, all these herd immunity people, there's no evidence of herd immunity. I don't know. All of history. You look back at any virus, and this is how it works. Our bodies learn to fight it. Think about that idea. Your body can't fight viruses. The human body's not capable of fighting viruses. I'm sorry, what is a fever? And these are things that were very simple to us because we already know these things. Again, outside the first few weeks. Everybody seemed to pretty much get it. Okay. Older people. My parents, still today, during flu season, they'll get things delivered instead of going out to the store. Still today, they know that if there's something on the news about a virus or something going around, all right, they're going to be a little more cautious. It's just the way it works. And you didn't have to, but they went out of their way to make it seem like your body couldn't fight it. Nobody could fight it. Stay at home, 6 feet apart. Remember the idea that was being floated? Well, a household with more than 4 people and fewer than 6 rooms or something, we may have to start separating people in structures. Yeah, what are you going to do? I'm sorry, you'll have to go to a hotel. Yeah, that's perfectly safe. There's no kind of virus you can catch there.
Well, remember when it came to the holidays of 2020?
Oh, yeah.
And even 21?
Yes.
That if you were out, that, if people were looking, neighbors were looking to see if there were cars outside your house, and if there were cars outside your house, then they called the police. You were having a unsanctioned, could you say Christmas party, or did it have to be holiday?
Oh, you can't say.
I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how far
if it
the
were
vote goes.
An unsanctioned Christmas party, then sorry, all enforcement agencies are coming to your door
with guns out.
Yeah, exactly. And remember the idea. Well, we are not going to have people over at the whole. And it was just so stupid. The virtue signaling where they're sitting on, we're going to be sitting outside on the patio and eating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
And
you live in Fargo.
And by the way, at that point, everybody had been exposed to it.
Well, and
they now believe that within the first, few months, everybody was exposed to it.
Right.
And we've talked about it. You've had it a number of times. And you got sick. I mean, you were.
Mm-hmm. I've had it twice.
Yeah, I know. I've had it, but I've never tested positive. And every time I've been sick, I've tested myself and haven't. But we all know I had it. It was in my blood system. Mm-hmm. However, my body reacted. Who knows? My body reacted differently than yours did. So.
Why? The upper respiratory I had that a couple of months ago was much worse than either COVID bout. And that kind of put everything in perspective for me. The COVID lasted longer, but the upper respiratory infection that I had just a couple of months ago was much worse than either of those.
Yeah, you were bad that day. Yeah.
And
those days.
It's not, the thing is, it's not hard to figure out. We assess it. I know my body has built immunity. I have no doubt about that. I have an underlying condition with my lung, and it's genetic, and nothing I can change about that. But I also know what I'm going to go through if I have upper respiratory or COVID or anything that affects my lungs. What is it, smog alert day? It's not smog alert. Air quality alert day?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not mowing my lawn that day. Those things we adapt to,
Wait a minute. Weren't we told not to drive, or what was it? Was it you said that?
What?
The other day, somebody put out the thing, don't drive or don't do something.
Oh, I think that was from California.
California?
Don't drive during certain hours. Yeah. Curtail your driving during certain hours. Right. Yeah.
And it happened to be rush hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Early in the morning, later in the evening.
So
Los Angeles, no driving
Which, of course, you have to do in the morning drive time and the afternoon drive time.
Exactly. Well, and no, but so many things, that's a good point. So many things, by the way, have kind of stayed with us on this whole COVID thing. The nature of them, it's like they're reapproaching the line again, going, maybe we should tell people not to do this, the whole control thing. And also, I think something in individuals, too. I think there's something where if you find money, the denomination of which is going to determine whether you pick it up or not. Anything below a $5 is going to remain on the ground. And, it's just kind of that someone else has touched it thing. We've pretty much gotten past it. But you see that where people, I still see people all the time on a regular basis wearing masks. I still see them all the time. And it's usually one or two people. And, if I see an elderly person wearing a mask, and it's always been this way, long before COVID it was this way. If I see an elderly person wearing a mask, well, there's probably an underlying reason. And it probably goes beyond fear. It's probably something real. But you see young people wearing masks. Mm-hmm. And again, could be an underlying condition, don't know, but for the most part, we have moved on from it.
I saw a whole family and the whole family of kids the other day in the store were all wearing masks.
Oh, well, that's got to be the mom thing. Mom and dad, sorry, everybody mask up.
Yep, the whole family was masked.
Yep. Were they robbing a bank? No. I have to ask the question.
No, they were in the supermarket, so they were getting robbed.
The toddler bandits?
they were
getting robbed.
Right. And they didn't want anybody to see them getting robbed.
Exactly.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Coming up on the top of the hour, man, we don't have enough time in the day. The CBO raises the 2024 deficit forecast by $400 billion. AOC proving she is totally pro-terrorist. Mm-hmm. Good to see she's not holding back on that.
Yeah.
And reading this, just this editorial here. The Democrats cannot pretend away Joe Biden's mental and physical decline.
Yep.
They're trying to.
They really are.
Yesterday was just a zoo.
Mm.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Garry McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Sad to hear about the death of Willie Mays, 93 years old.
Yeah.
And all I have to say is the catch.
Yeah.
The picture was out there, the over-the-shoulder catch that he made,
Mm-hmm.
which is the one thing that a lot of people who were alive when he played, it was such a long time ago, he stopped. Think about this. He stopped playing over half a century ago.
Yeah.
I think he stopped in 73. But when he played, and for me, I mean, it's like just the the memories of baseball back then in the 60s. And you talk about, the Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, and, just the great pitchers of that era. And, Willie Mays is as part of it. 24 times an MVP. 24 times.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 24 All-Star games, not MVP. 24 times was an All-Star. But what a great baseball player. I mean, I don't get into the who is the best ever, because I think different eras are, it's like the whole golfing thing came up. And who was it who said for golf? It said, well, could you have competed against, I forgot who they said, some modern player.
Mm-hmm.
Goes, of course I could. Why? Well, what do you mean? Well, because if I was in this era, I'd be working out. Mm-hmm. I'd be using the new equipment. Mm-hmm. We would have the latest medical devices for things that we didn't have 50 years ago.
All that's available to golfers today would be available to them.
Right, exactly.
So,
including quicker recuperation from injuries that you get because of modern technology.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I've always thought it's the dumbest argument, but I have found out that in the United States of America, we love having dumb arguments. Arguments where you can never resolve it seem to even make some people more passionate about their opinion. No, this person would be much better. No, this one. Well, how are we going to settle this? You can't, you idiots. Just shut up.
Mm.
But Willie Mays, one of the best ever. I mean, a lot of times he's second on the list to Babe Ruth. Because Babe Ruth was a heck of a pitcher. I mean, you think about it, people just think, Babe Ruth was the fat guy hitting the ball. But he was
also the fat guy on the mound.
Yeah, he was a great pitch. He was great. He didn't end up pitching later on in his career because they want him to bat, but but he was a totally solid pitcher and a great hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And Willie Mays was a great hitter, great home run hitter, lifetime average. You think about how long he played for. My gosh, what was it? He was in the Negro Leagues in 48. I think, was it 50-51 he came into the majors? Because he played with the New York San Francisco Giants. New York Giants became San Francisco Giants, and then with the Mets. I think he played for a year. The Mets, yeah. And I think he had 660 home runs. But he could field. He could do everything. He could steal bases. There wasn't anything that Willie Mays couldn't do. He was a rare athlete.
Yeah.
And I just remember the film of the over. I didn't see it live, but man, you saw it all the time. That over the shoulder catch, and that would have been. I'm doing this from memory now. I believe it was Game 1, Polo Grounds. New York Giants against the Cleveland Indians at that time, way back then. So, but yeah, sad to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, you ready? Here we go. AOC, her latest tweet about Benjamin Netanyahu. This man should not be addressing Congress. He is a war criminal, and he certainly has no regard for U.S. law, which is explicitly designed to prevent U.S. weapons from facilitating human rights abuses. His invitation be revoked. It should have never been sent in the first place. And that was in response to Netanyahu and the video he put together attacking the Biden administration, where he said, I told Secretary Blinken it was inconceivable that in the past few months the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunitions to Israel, which it is. And again, this is just AOC with her pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-American. Because if you look at the anti-Semitism you see today and the terrorism you see today cheering Hamas, that's anti-Americanism too.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's where my thought came from in the events, and it will happen when it happens. There's another attack on American soil. How will the radicals respond? Will they cheer them on? I have to believe they will. I can't possibly believe for a moment all of a sudden they're going to give up their cause. You know, the whole pro-terrorism thing.
Well, when you think about it, it's time, but I think it's end of July and just a couple of weeks before the DNC in August.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have a lot of unhappy, very, very unhappy Democrats. And as we know, and I don't know, I haven't seen the polls lately, but there's still a significant portion of Democrats that are pro-terrorist and pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic. I mean, that's where it lives.
Yeah.
It lives in the Democratic Party. It's not a Republican Party thing. The anti-Semitism, the Jew-hating comes from the Democratic Party. Not all Democrats, but a significant portion.
Right.
And the rest are quiet. And there's the other things are they're quiet anti-Semites because they'll, if you ask them directly, they will say, well, no, I'm not. I support Israel. But they let Biden get away with the garbage he gets away with, and they just shut up. So they're passive if there's such a thing, they're passive anti-Semites.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very clear where the radicals are, who they are. They are members of Congress.
Yep.
And the DNC, the convention's coming up. I've been saying it's going to be right there on stage for everyone to see. Prime time.
Well, it got to be interesting yesterday with, I'm telling you, the mainstream media and cheap fakes, and I got to find the audio. I think it was Stuart Varney and hang on, let me find it here. And Brett Baer, because they got to go. We've been talking about this. This stuff isn't fake. And it's like it's just,
nothing was edited. They just showed the video.
Yeah, it's like and it's just and you could see it on social media. It was almost the Republicans and we're saying, seriously, you want to go with this?
Well, I mean, it's the same side that says that man is a woman.
Yeah,
so
true.
Why not?
Yeah,
what you see isn't real.
Here we go. Here's the back and forth.
What we do on this program is we let the tape speak for itself. That is not manipulation. I think we're doing the right thing.
Stuart, good morning. I think you're right. We have not edited that tape. We have not edited any of these tapes. We have not sped them up. We have not changed them. We have not seen any change in multiple angles of the same video moment. It was not a deep fake for the former president to grab the president's arm and pull him. That actually happened in person. So there's nothing fake about it. There's nothing fake about the Italian prime minister grabbing the president as he turned around in Italy and gave a thumbs up to another skydiver. But he pulled away from the group, and the Italian prime minister brought him back in. There's nothing fake about him not dancing at the Juneteenth ceremony at the White House and seeming being frozen. Those are all things that happened. So for the White House to say that this is a deep fake or a cheap fake is really interesting. And I think it's a moment, Stuart, that tells you how concerning the issue of age and competency is in the polls that they're looking at.
And it's true, but I mean, I'm telling you, everywhere I saw it, mainstream media, you know, I forgot whether it was CBS, NBC, whatever, all covering the story. Here's what a cheap fake. If you want to know what a cheap fake is, and it's like, wow. And the only thing I saw early on was the one where the people and the parachutists were coming down. And the first video I showed you didn't see the guy in the parachute he was looking at, and people were saying, you don't have it in the total context. He's looking at the guy in the parachute that had just come down. And when that came out, though, it still didn't change your opinion of it.
Why did he wander off and then it was weird that he just separated himself from the group on the stage and wandered off over there and was trying to talk to the person? It didn't matter how you put it in, when you put it in perspective, it didn't change the fact that it was strange. The same thing at the fundraiser. Well, you didn't see the moments before where he was waving and clapping his hand and everything was normal. Actually, what that did, the longer version of that video, made it worse because you see him go from normal to freezing.
Well, you saw that yesterday with that. It's only a short 10-second clip where he's talking, and all of a sudden he forgets, but it's the look in his face that we've all seen, as if the entire body went blank.
Right.
And if you've ever dealt with people with dementia, it's what you see in them. I mean, he went from being Joe Biden to being just, it looks like just a shell.
Yeah.
You know, with eyes and everything looking, and then he grumbled and then got back to where he was. But those are the indications, and that's what you see. You know, one of the last coherent times with my mom. My mom died in April of 2020, and I was up end of January and then beginning of March. And then beginning of March of 2020 was COVID hit, and I couldn't go back. And then she passed away in early 2020. But when I was back the end of January of that year, and normally I would have been up President's Day weekend, which would have been a couple weeks later, but I had a wedding to go to. So I went and visited my mom then, and my mom was, you know, just very, very quiet, never angry, really never got to that kind of a stage, would be confused. At times would not know who my father was, and would ask me, like, who are you? Which had to be just, can't imagine how that affected my dad. But she never forgot me when I came in town. She always knew, never forgot me. And maybe, you know, you try to figure out why, and it's like you just can't. You just don't know why. They remember some people and don't. But my mom was in a thing where she was just sort of, just extremely quiet, not saying anything. And we've all seen that stage. You've gone through that where they're just quiet. And I had my back to her, and I was talking to my dad. I was standing. She was in one chair. I had my back to her, and my father was on the other couch. And I said, yeah. I said, I was. And he said, well, when are you coming back again? I said, well, beginning of March, I won't be back because I have a wedding to go to. And all of a sudden, I hear my mother just sort of mumbling, oh. I said, I have a friend of mine's getting married. And I hear my mother say, oh, so you go be with your friends and you won't come visit your mother and father, huh? Oh, my heart broke. It just broke. And I turned around, and she had this sarcastic grin on her face. And what that was a moment of pure clarity in her mind where she says, I'm going to totally harass my son here. Yeah. And it was one of the most joyful times in the last couple of months, because it was that moment where she did what she always did with me, was she remembered, oh, yeah, I got to harass the heck out of my son here, make him feel, fake guilt, whatever. I'm going to make him feel guilty here. And we all burst out laughing. And so you go through those moments that they're out of it, then they're in. Maybe that's more of the latter stages. In the early stages, it's where they are coherent and then lose it for, 20, 30 seconds. And that seems to be the stage that Biden is going through.
Yeah, and there is something that's going on now that is not momentary. It is not isolated. It is on a regular basis.
Right.
It's happening now every time he's in public. And so now you think about a debate that's 90 minutes long. Word yesterday that it looks like RFK Jr. is not going to qualify to be on the debate stage. So it's just those two. And I don't know how they expect to pull that off. I really don't. I don't. And if it's catastrophic, where do you go from there? Who was it that wrote, was it Piers Morgan? That basically said, look, with Obama, having to pull on his arm and the whole thing, this is really the confirmation of what we've all been watching. But if they allow the debate to go on, if it does happen, and he's up there for 90 minutes and they have multiple moments, I don't know where you go if you're the DNC after that. I don't know what you do, because it will be chaos within the party. They're going to scramble. How do you handle that situation? How do you fix it? I'm telling you, I as the days go on, I don't know how they're going to get that done.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Green Jean-Pierre talking about cheap fakes from the media, something that we would never do. In fact, here she is talking about the cheap fakes, and no cheap fakes here.
That video was a cheap, a cheap fake. The cheap fakes video that they were seeing. Hey, our cheap fakes video. Cheap fakes, these deep fakes. Cheap, a cheap fake.
So there you go. No altering of that audio.
None whatsoever.
Just want to make sure.
Wasn't even edited. Nobody even added music. That wasn't even music that you heard. It wasn't. Those weren't words that were being said.
Right.
This isn't even on the radio.
Right. You're not listening to the radio right now.
Nope, you're not listening to the radio.
This is a dream.
It's all a dream.
About to trigger somebody right now. Garry McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. So it was fascinating yesterday to watch the mainstream media try to tell the American people that what you're seeing in the president is not real. What your eyes and your ears tell you. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of things that can, make, because of our own experience of dealing, especially with relatives that have some form of dementia, is that what Biden is going through is very similar to what many people have experienced.
Yep.
And that's the problem. And it's not just, the freezing is a part of it, but it's a totality of everything. It's a totality of, like this from about a week ago, when Biden cannot pronounce words or even sentences, phrases. Mm-hmm. Here's an example from last week.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
And that's an entire sentence. He slurs through the words. Again, yesterday, because I talk to my dad almost every day, if he has time for me. And I talked to him yesterday. My father has no problems. It is very rare that my father slurs a word.
Mm-hmm.
Very rare.
Right.
Or mispronounces a word. And that is something that you see with Biden all the time. And then, if you're going to put him out, he's going to do something every day that makes people wonder. And when he was out yesterday it was only like a 10-second video, but he seemed to be coherent and then completely lost his train of thought. But it wasn't a normal loss of thought. It was the facial movements, what happened to his face and his eyes, because as he turned to the right and then he became, the face was a complete blank stare.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that people look at and go, oh, there's something wrong here. And then he went back to, okay, what I meant was, and you never completed the thought and went on to another thought. But it was that moment there where he just froze. His body became different. And it's noticeable. And people want to know, well, what is that? What's wrong with him? Because normal people that have their cognitive abilities don't do that.
Right. It's, and it can be, if it is dementia related, it can be as you turn or as somebody enters a room, even if it's somebody that is a loved one that leaves the room and comes back into the room, then all of a sudden they don't recognize them. Or if they turn and they see something that isn't familiar. One of the things for a president is that they're going to be in unfamiliar situations. In other words, they're going to be surrounded by people who are not familiar to them and surroundings that aren't familiar to them, in that it's not their home, it's not their maybe a home that they've lived in. What your dad's lived in that home for decades.
Yeah.
My parents have lived in the home they live in right now since 83, I think, 82. So when you talk about dementia, then familiar surroundings are important. Well, if this is dementia related, then it would make sense as he turns in any situation where he turns around and then all of a sudden sees a room full of people that he, again, isn't familiar with. And that's going to be the case with any president. Then there could be those moments of, because he's probably, if it's dementia related, then he's struggling in that moment to figure out where he is. And it becomes physical in nature because that's, your body is responding to a number of things. And one of the things, the freezing is part of it. The way that they walk is part of it. And this is something that, one thing about Karine Jean-Pierre is that she's approaching this as if she's only trying to convince the media. While that's a big part of her job, the problem here is that millions of us caretakers know what we're seeing because we're all too familiar with it. We know it. And as is the case with in the political arena, you're kind of going to battle with the opposition. You're going to battle with anybody who's not towing the line. But in a situation like this, you can't try and repaint reality. Not to, again, millions of us who know what we're seeing and are too familiar with this to know otherwise. And that's the problem that we're, where we are right now. There is something has happened. I can't tell you what it is, but something has happened in the last month.
This started really, the attack back. I look at it and say it was Joe Scarborough about 10 days ago when he just went crazy and talked about how, he talks to Biden and Biden has it more together than any of, the GOP speakers of the House. Well, at that particular point, if you want to defend and go, well, I think, no, he's just, yeah, he's a little bit old, but he's got his full cognitive abilities. That's one thing, even if people don't believe you saying that. To start comparing him to much younger GOP members who you may disagree with politically, but have their full cognitive abilities and try to sell that, that's when people know. That's when people knew that Joe Scarborough was lying.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't. Don't tell me that that whether it's Johnson or McCarthy or whomever, Newt Gingrich, whoever you want to go through, when they were Speaker of the House, that they didn't have better cognitive ability than the president.
Right.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
And so nobody's going to believe that. And they, when it went through social media, it was hilarious. I don't know where it came from on social media, but the left was promoting it. See, look at Trump here. Trump needs help. Yeah. And it's Trump walking off the stage, like waving to people, and he reaches down, gives his son a handshake.
Right.
And I don't know if whoever was on the left promoting it was trying to say, see, he needed help to get off. And then when people reacted, he would say, well, see, that's the same with Biden. He was just getting a little bit of help, and you were saying, and so I'm saying the same about Trump. It's like, you can't make those. That's where they kill themselves, is attempting to make that analogy. They don't even realize that making the comparison makes it worse.
Well, and it's something that we brought up a few days ago, and that is every time they go on the defensive, they're bringing it to the attention of people who haven't already seen it. And that's making it worse. And they don't get it. They don't understand it. But we're in a situation, and this is the tell. They are backed into a corner, and the tell is that they're strongly on the defensive on it this week. And now we're heading into a weekend where he's going to be at the beach and then going off to Camp David to prepare for the debate. Well, the problem is that debate is just around the corner. And I don't know how he gets through 90 minutes. I really don't know how they make that work.
Just reading some sentences from Jeffrey Blehar's column in National Review. The Democrats cannot pretend to weigh Joe Biden's mental and physical decline. He's got a quote from George Orwell from 1984. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Joe Biden is not well. Nowadays, this is a truism, but you will recall that once upon a time, and not too long ago, in fact, it was forbidden to point this out in public under the threat of social censure. It was obvious enough to me back on August 16, 2021, when I watched with horror as he mumbled and fumbled his way through the Afghanistan withdrawal speech. Partisanship being what it is, people assumed I was upset about the policy itself when I said that I couldn't see him running for office again after that speech, but that wasn't so. It was Biden's demeanor that shocked me. Slurred words, a sleepy and distracted tone, suggesting periodic loss of mental focus, and his visibly withered face and slump-shouldered bearing. The whole time I was cringing with an embarrassed empathy that comes not from politics, but rather from that human reserve of mercy and shame we all share. He'd already looked slow and out of it during the abbreviated 2020 campaign, but his rapid slide since only a year before jarred me. It was ugly and unfortunate to see him looking lost and frail during the speech. And then he goes on and on and on and on. Of the left attempting to, attack you if you say that, but that's the reality. And people know it. And the one reason it does evoke, it evokes sympathy for me. It doesn't change my mind, though, on any issue. And that's the one thing. I really wonder whether the Democrats think, well, look, if we can't convince the people that he's fine and there's no cognitive problems, let's see if we can get sympathy out of them.
Well, there's another thing, is that the sympathy is only going to last for so long. It may be that they gain sympathy, but after the sympathy, it's going to be evaluation as to whether or not he can do the job. I don't want anyone to suffer. I have one theory that the party kind of needs Joe to finish. And by finish, I mean just get through November 5th. Because the party is kind of in this situation where, well, we can't launch a new campaign. We probably, a decent chance we wouldn't, even if we did, we're not going to beat Trump. So we kind of let Trump win. We let Joe retire so we don't have to backpedal on all the lies we've been telling about his condition. And then we let Trump clean up the mess that Joe has created. We let Trump and the GOP suffer over the next 4 years, and we come back and take a shot again in 28. But the problem is getting to November 5th, and I have my doubts.
He goes, now it's too late to pretend, this is a fringe issue in every poll of the race. It is absolutely top of mind for American voters. So it's got to be spun by the Democrats. The Democratic Party today demands you reject the evidence of your ears and eyes, and so the dumbest from its willing foot soldiers in the media begins. Did you notice that Biden happens to wander off aimlessly during public events like an old man unaware of the basics of protocol or even where he is? Did you notice he occasionally freezes up like an old mentally unsure man? Then you are being lied to by the dark arts of disinformation, if you notice that.
Yeah.
Misleading GOP videos of Biden are going viral. The fact checks have trouble keeping up, reads an NBC News headlines. They're deep fakes. Cheap fakes is a term they prefer. The videos are edited, we are told, or ripped out of context.
Right.
And the fact is they are not.
No, they're not.
They're not.
And when it's a 90-minute debate, they're certainly not going to be able to make that case.
Yep. As he writes, friends, the videos are not edited.
They are not edited. There's plenty of ways to see. You can see them everywhere. The long-form videos. And people know what they're seeing. Those of us who are dealing with it, we understand full well what we're seeing.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Garry McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Garry McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. Coming up following the top of the hour, the Trump campaign out there talking about Biden's mass amnesty for illegals will steal Social Security and Medicaid from American seniors. And we'll get to that part of the law that actually addresses that, and that is the second part of the law that will provide visas to hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, including those enrolled in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program who have graduated from American universities. The Trump campaign spokesperson said in a statement that the amnesty, because you also get your Social Security card and all that, which means you can sign up for Social Security.
Right.
Social Security and Medicare rolls you can be added to. And one of the weaknesses there, because we read the column yesterday which said, I think it was Charles Cook wrote, what the hell is he doing? Does he want to lose? Young people are moving away. Old people, for the most part, older people, I don't want to say old because I'm part of that group now, are sticking where they are.
Right.
But this could make some of the older demographics go, well, wait a minute, now you're taking money from me.
Right.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.